This episode of Talk Shop is sponsored by Precision Media and Marketing, servicing the real estate industry, providing complete marketing services, including measurement, floor plans, photography, videography, and graphic design. Visit us at precisionm&m.com, and that link will be dropped in the show notes. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce the 2022 Chair of Consumer Real Estate Canada, Melissa Newton with the Commercial Group in Saskatoon. Welcome, Melissa.
Hi, Slava. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm honored to be welcoming you all to our second anniversary of CREC and one of my personal favorite segments, the Talk Shop. Before we get into the program, I'd like to reflect on the humble beginnings of CREC, the growth we've experienced, and give a couple hints to the programs on the horizon. I'd like to take us back, as Slava mentioned, to April 2020, March, April. I'm sure many of you can relate. We're working from our home office, which for many was the kitchen table. And perhaps for others, there was an office, but you had to find the desk after it became a collection ground for all your loose mail and other miscellaneous home items, or maybe that was just mine. Every channel on your TV is covering the pandemic. Your phone is ringing constantly. Tenants are freaking out. Landlords don't know what to do. Lenders don't know what to do. And all of a sudden, Mike Kehoe's name appears. Michael has a special way of connecting with people, and he shares with you that he has started a cross-country market update call to stay connected during this unprecedented time. I hate to use that word, but I thought I'd have to throw it in just to get us back to the real feelings. He encourages you to join the call, and with no real reason to say no, you accept the position and tune in next week where you're greeted by voices across the country. Maybe I didn't ask enough questions, but I do laugh when I think there was only 8 people on the call and thought it was just going to be a very intimate call from across the country. Fast forward a few months, a few weeks, and we have a wider audience than we could have ever imagined, with over 100 members tuning in each and every month. This has allowed us to introduce our new programs, such as Talk Shop, where we are today, and other exciting items in the work, including a retailer podium, where industry leaders will be sharing their knowledge and providing us with real-time market insights. We also are in the process of recording a podcast, as many of us brokers spend a lot of time in our cars. It's great to be able to catch CREC on the go. Before I pass this back to Mike, I'd like to thank you all CREC volunteers, advisory panel members, students, guest speakers, and participants. We have a special group of people who are able to connect us coast to coast, and I look forward to all the exciting events that CREC has planned for the future. And with that, I'll send it over to Mike to recap our top 5 trends that we had mentioned previously, and then we'll go into some new trends.
Thank you, Melissa, for your kind introduction. It's been great to be gathering with everyone on our monthly calls and our Talk Shop Zoom meetings. As you mentioned, CREC is Canadian content created for Canadians by Canadians, and it's a not-for-profit group. So I'm just going to run through quickly the top 5 trends that we presented back in January, and then we can roll on to some new trends. The first trend in the industry talent deck got shuffled as many consumer real estate professionals changed firms, went independent, switched industries, or just burned out and left the business. Maternity leaves are up dramatically, so we know that working from home was productive in so many ways. The second trend, the rise of luxe retail in major Canadian cities, as luxury retail clusters are thriving, and for some, it is the best of times in the worst of times. Did someone say that the Chanel boutique in downtown Vancouver enjoyed over $100 million of sales in 2021? Trend number 3, consumer real estate happens everywhere, from e-commerce to bricks and mortar stores and restaurants to food trucks, even on your phone. Stacked Market, 100,000 square foot shopping experience designed entirely out of shipping containers, opened in Toronto in 2021. What's next, my friends? Well, wherever and whatever it is in Canada, it will involve our CREC colleagues. Trend number 4, Healthcare workers are often hailed as pandemic heroes. Well, consumer real estate professionals who lease, manage, and administrate retail venues across the country are also heroes, keeping the stores and restaurants leased to supply the nation with goods and services and food from coast to coast to coast. Without our CREC colleagues, the shopping and dining experiences in Canada would be a lot different than it looks today. And it will be different again in the future. Trend number 5, retailers and restaurateurs kept their customers close, their suppliers closer, and their landlords on speed dial. Store and restaurant owners got to know their landlords up close and personal over the past 2 years. Now, I'll turn it back to Melissa Newton to continue on with other trends. Back to you, Melissa.
Thanks, Mike. So yeah, some new other trends that we identified throughout our weekly calls, I guess monthly now, was the great resignation across all sectors of the economy, where many professionals were left corporate life to start new entrepreneurial ventures and lease retail, food services, and office space. I actually caught Mario's interview with Arlene Dickinson this morning, and Arlene mentioned how many women actually were forced to leave the workforce during the COVID pandemic, and how we're now generations behind to get women back into the workforce. So I thought that was actually a very interesting, relevant topic that was 2 years ago, and now we're still 2.5 years later, let's say over 2.5, getting there. So interesting comment there. Number 7, the emergence of DoorDash and Skip the Dishes, along with retail and food service pop-up locations, where tenants are skipping leases and opting for shorter terms and percentage rents. This is a huge topic. We know that Skip the Dishes has done extremely well. Now we've got Uber Eats, we've got DoorDash. These are big topics that are really changing our platform and what we're seeing in the commercial real estate sector.
Melissa, I'd like to just jump in on that and
sure.
And remind everyone of our previous guest on the last CREC Live Cross Canada call, Linda Farha. And that's exactly what she mentioned there too, is that pop-up leasing is only becoming more common as some of these business owners want to stay away from the 5-year lease terms and the higher rates and the TIs required, and sometimes just opt for a kiosk in a shopping center, and that's becoming more prevalent. Back to you, Melissa.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Number 8, we've got the continued emergence of the dollar store. The retailers that ate Canada. Dollar General planning 1,100 stores in Canada, and Dollarama with 1,397 stores open over the past 29 years, with 60 to 70 new stores planned in 2022. Each location between 8 to 15,000 square feet. These gorilla-sized retailers are on a roll. I'm sure that every market can speak to this. There's many here.
You guys can jump in with your experiences in your different markets as well, but I just have to comment that there are now 2 Dollarama stores in South Edmonton Common.
What?
Not even Tim Hortons has 2 locations in South Edmonton Common.
I had a situation a few years ago where I had a Dollarama on the street and I was leasing an enclosed community shopping center, and they wanted to come into the enclosed community shopping center, but they were already right across the street, and they were going to keep both, and they did. And they did very well in each.
And they're still successful? Wow.
They are truly the Starbucks of everyday retail.
And they're often an anchor for a lot of the new developments. So they'll be one of the first tenants almost before the parking lot is paved, and they'll be the first ones in there. And it will be a huge draw to get everyone there. So it's actually very interesting to see their business model. Are we ready to move on to trend number 9? The outsourcing of the leasing functions at Ivanhoe Cambridge Shopping Center portfolio to a major brokerage. We expect to see more of this with JLL, CBRE, Cushman Wakefield, and other brokerages looking to expand their reach. Now, I know, Mike, you might want to comment on this because you've got together with a lot of smaller brokerages, and that's what our group is, but I think that maybe you can provide some insight to this.
Yes, thank you, Melissa. Yeah, we have brokerages of all sizes represented in CREC, and we're just seeing that the trend for outsourcing with the large development companies and major mall landlords, shopping center landlords, is a trend that's going to continue. I'm aware of other firms that are looking at bringing on contract management, contract leasing. And so it's a very interesting trend as the talent at these firms gets recycled and repurposed, reassigned. It's really changing the dynamic of our industry, and it's gaining momentum. Back to you, Melissa.
Thanks, Mike. I think you could also tie that into the just the changing of where people are in their industries and where they are with their jobs. Remember one talk shop with I forget his name, maybe Slava can jump in, and the headhunter. And this stat stuck out to me so much, where he said that 70% of people were not satisfied with their jobs. And just how when we were jumping, so we went to work from home, and now getting people back to work, and how that's just changing with everyone. So I just thought we can probably talk about this a little bit more as Vicky moves through the trends, but it was just a very interesting topic that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, that was David Little with Hayes Recruiting, who's a regular guest on our calls.
One other thing to add, just more specifically about the repurposing of professionals and of skills. My firm is in the process of hiring a property manager at the moment because our man had his very last day of being a working man yesterday. So he just retired, and I've interviewed about 5 professional property managers so far. And the trend that I'm hearing from all of them is that my position has changed so much in the past 2 years, and it's just not enjoyable anymore. Some of them are event planning when they don't want to be. Some of them are wearing way more hats than they want to be, just because the division of labor has become so confused. And so this is a field in our industry that's really undergoing a lot of change right now, is property management.
And we've seen that the salaries for property managers escalate dramatically over the past 2 years, which is very interesting. And all of us in our industry, no matter what discipline, we're acting as counselors, psychologists, sometimes talking tenants and landlords off the ledge, managing their expectations on rents, business terms, and tenant insolvency. It's been a very interesting couple of years. Back to you, Melissa.
Yeah, I think we should start getting social work degrees with our business degrees. Might help us communicate.
Okay, you can come in if you want.
Yeah, jump in.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Jump in, please do.
Vicky, are you on? Are you ready to jump in and take the last half of these trends?
I'm ready to move on to number 10.
Okay, let's go.
The continued momentum of cannabis retail store expansion. The retail sector was a key absorber of consumer real estate in 2021, and the green rush is sure to continue in 2022. And I will share with all of you, the province of New Brunswick, they regulate their own, we sell our own cannabis, the province does. And prior to the pandemic, the province was thinking of privatizing it because it was not making any money. We are now, out of all the Atlantic Canadian provinces, making the most on cannabis, that they've decided to keep it. And they're actually going to roll it into expanding through to private retailers through legislation changes. So yeah, the green rush is certainly going to continue into 2022.
Are you contributing to those sales numbers, Vicky?
No, I drink heavily, but I don't do the other stuff. Number 11, the shift away from the traditional shopping center tenant mix as medical clinics, car dealerships open in major malls and other retail venues. The mom and pop retailers are back on the main mall and on the main street. And I'm sure we've all seen that. We now actually have one huge enclosed shopping center in the province of New Brunswick, and it actually has a car dealership in it. It's a Land Rover retailer. The store is being built, the dealership is being built, but in the meantime, they've moved into our main mall, and we are seeing this exact same thing happen.
Yeah, and of course the massive new Toyota dealership at West Edmonton Mall, which just opened, I believe, last year.
That's a great example. Yes.
On the subject of medical clinics, I mean, we did probably half a dozen medical deals last year, and some of these were the type of deal where we pay a substantial TI and really buy up the rates, and so they're just extremely favorable from an asset management point of view, especially when the covenant is that strong. And that's a trend that we absolutely see continuing.
What we've done as a developer and a landlord is we've partnered with retailers such as Shoppers Drug Marts or Jean Coutu's and partnered with them to help co-share some of that TI that's required for the fit up to put the medical clinics in. And it's a great driver of bringing people to the centers.
Does anybody have any comments on Shoppers' recent acquisition of LifeMark and how that may be a trend of, you know, major players in the healthcare industry continuing to consolidate and bringing more services under the same corporate roof?
I know that there's two trends that relate to that, in my opinion. One is consolidation, and the other one is niche. So it tends to polarize the same way we saw in price points, the Dollarama and the Lux. I think we've been seeing this for a number of years now, and I think we're going to see the pace of that accelerate.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, I did hear one consolidator in the medical community who was basically saying they did not like the deal at all because it took away the possibility of his company being acquired. But what are you going to do? But I think it's going to be ongoing. But I do have a question, though. Because, you know, the dentists have been like, you know, you have a plaza, there's a dentist, you know, you figure that out. But the medical community seems to have been a lot quieter, but seems to have stepped up more recently. Does anyone know what the reason for that? What's changed in that industry?
I think there's less family doctors, family physicians. So a lot of the medical professionals are very specialized. I think there's one part of it. Kind of what we're seeing in our industry.
I think there's certain drivers in the industry, like the people from CDL that started with one medical clinic in the Carrie Square in Montreal and now has gone across the country. They bought 38 clinics from McKesson and they're doing big things with it. And interestingly enough, the first one that they did was part of a shopping center. Not the greatest shopping center, but the medical clinic itself is really nice. It's done to first-class standards, and it's not far from the hospital. And the great advantage of the whole thing is that it's got all the specialties. It's got orthopedics, and it's got dermatology, and it's got everything you can possibly think of, where it becomes very multidisciplinary, plus general practice, which I think that as more and more of the baby boomer general practitioners retire, is going to be basically the way to go for for people of my generation.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point. I just see a note from Shane Olson here in the chat box. Shane, do you want to bring up your point? Yeah, go ahead. It's about luxury car dealerships in Sherwood Park.
Hi, yeah, good morning. Thanks very much, Mike, for having me out to the meeting here. I'm an economic developer, so I'm probably one of the only ones on the call here. I see a few familiar faces from my time in Southern Alberta, Darren Coyle and Dan Wojcik up here in the Edmonton area, and I think Kaylee as well. At any rate, I just thought I'd throw that in because there was some discussion about car dealerships, and I think this one here is really kind of changing the industry here a little bit. Lamborghinis and Maseratis and some of that opportunity to attract wealth, bring in some sort of business retention, expansion opportunities around, supporting our restaurants, our dining, and our major retail when people come in to try out the cars and do these test drives and things like that. So it's kind of interesting. It's in kind of a nondescript light industrial area. It's connected with our Chevrolet Buick GMC dealership, but an interesting model. to have a look at. Thought I would share that for general interest. Thank you.
I'm looking at the website right now, and it's quite the selection of vehicles. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, you're welcome.
What area are you in, Shane?
I am in Sherwood Park, Alberta, just east of Edmonton. So home to 74% of the refineries in Western Canada. So we do have a little bit higher average incomes here, about 160,000 is our average household income here in Sherwood Park. 2.9 people per household, average age is about 39.
Right. Very nice city.
Back to you, Vicki.
Oh, thank you. Consumer real estate brokers became therapists, coaches for retail and restaurant tenants. You needed a shoulder to cry on. Your broker was always there for you in 2021. Mike, you had alluded to that a little bit earlier.
Yes. Yeah. And thank you. Just by way of introduction, this is Vicki Carr at the Hardman Group in Moncton, New Brunswick, a member of the CREC advisory panel. Carry on.
Thank you. And finally, store owners faced continued staff shortages, ineffective, government support programs, supply chain challenges, and increased shipping costs, increased shrinkage rates that included flash mob shoplifters for some insolvency and closures, which I'm sure we've all experienced a little bit of all of those or a whole lot of those.
And I think Phil Lickstraw from the Richter Group in Montreal is with us. Phil, did you have anything to add on the insolvency front?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. It's so far quiet. We have not had a lot of exposure to problematic situations of late, but given some of the softness in the first quarter, which is about to come to an end this weekend, we see some small cracks. Hopefully they won't widen, but one of the things of note is we are also, besides apparel and footwear and soft goods in general, continuing to be challenged for the most part. We're also seeing some slowdown on the hard goods sector, which includes furniture and some of the other home categories. Not totally surprisingly, because I think there's a limit to how many sofas and how many dining room tables people are going to put in their homes. But it's certainly not going away, but definitely a bit of a slowdown on the hard goods side. So sort of anxious to see what the second quarter is going to look like. But I sort of summarize the first quarter as having been quite underwhelming. And Easter in particular, not that momentous in terms of what was anticipated. I mean, a lot of people putting out, so-called excuses, inflation, weather, of course, supply chain clearly being a big issue, and the like. But nonetheless, at the end of the day, the results that we're hearing, and we follow retail sales every week for about 25 national retail chains. And as I say, I summarize them by saying they've been quite underwhelming. We'll see what happens. Sorry, a big part of it is also going to relate to the ability to get replenishment inventory, which has become a major migraine. Staff shortages and issues are certainly very clearly apparent and continue, but the inventory is by and large, the biggest challenge facing all these people. So that's sort of a bit of an update, but no major restructurings that we're hearing of. We'll see.
That's Bill Lickstraw at the Richter Consulting in Montreal, one of Canada's top insolvency specialists dealing in retail and other sectors. Thanks for your comments, Phil. Phil's a frequent guest on our CREC live across Canada calls, so appreciate your input today. Back to you, Vicki.
Thank you, Mike. Sorry, I was taking a sip. I was trying to escape for a minute. Sorry.
Are you drinking already?
Yes, I am.
Gotta stay warm somehow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we are supposed to get snow in Atlantic Canada. So yeah, I'm with Nikki. It's kind of depressing. So with all that said, I know from my personal point of view, from trying to hire people, just maintenance wise, because we've had a huge turnover, it's simply impossible. So Slava, good luck to you folks trying to find a property manager, because it's hard, very hard, because you think you get the right person and then transition happens yet again. High turnover.
Number one, I adore the East Coast accent. Number two, we've got about 5 really solid candidates, so I think we'll be in good hands. It's just a matter of finding the best fit.
I just want to, can I just step in here? Speaking of shortages, so I flew to Halifax on Friday from St. John's. And so through security, there is Tim Hortons, Freshie, and a local pub. They're all open at different times. They don't open all at the same time. So Tim Hortons has hours from 3:30 a.m. until 10:15. After which time Freshie then opens from 10:30, I think it was until like 2, and then there is a bit of overlap with this other pub. So I mean, there's a lot of angry people trying to get coffee and even like a muffin or something at 10:30, and it's hard to wrap your head around the fact that like there'd be a Tim Hortons closed in the airport in such minimal hours. So I believe obviously it's for staffing, and the airport's still not at full capacity here. But it's just the small luxuries that we're used to and conveniences they're still not back 100%. Certainly not in Newfoundland anyway.
Nikki, are you saying I can't get an airport beer at 4 in the morning?
No, I mean, you have to bring your own Baileys to put in your, well, maybe you could stop at the convenience store on the way in through and put it in your bag. But no, hopefully they open that back up before like real tourism hits, because I mean, a bit of a reputation here of early morning beers, but yeah, no, it's really disappointing. Like it really I felt for the people who had some flight delays because of a really foggy weekend.
Let's hope things continue to, yeah, go ahead, Melissa.
In Saskatoon, the Starbucks in the airport still hasn't reopened since COVID, and it's just been closed. And I wouldn't be surprised if we have a similar scheduling conflict. And like, I understand we're a smaller base, but it's the airports. When we went traveling this spring, the airports are very hit and miss, and you really have to, those stores have not recovered even close to pre-pandemic levels.
I'm interested to hear from a retailer's perspective, just on current trends and what's happening out there. I see Barry Lamley with us today from Lamley's Western Wear, a Western Canadian chain based in Calgary. What are you seeing out there, Barry?
There, I'm unmuted. Well, I'm going to play the devil's advocate kind of here, because our sales are extremely good right now. Like they have been for 5 or 6 months. I'm not just talking 5 or 10%, but 30 to 50% improvement in sales. The big thing that's a thorn in my side is the supply chain. If you look at our stores, they're fully stocked, but boy, have we had to jump through some loops to get there. And we don't always have first choices in product. Our best-selling boots might be missing off the shelf, but we got the second and third choices, our second and third choices. But from what I see around, I'm really, really happy with what's happening with retail in our market right now. And
is that the numbers you were talking about, 30 to 50% up? Is that compared to last year or compared to, shall we say, pre-pandemic levels?
We're now exceeding 2019 figures. The comparison I gave you is really against 2020 2020. No, 2021, which was up over 2020 substantially. We came out of the pandemic really quite well. So the numbers I'm looking at in 2022 are compared against 2021, which were slightly less than 2019. And now we're well on our way to exceeding 2021. So from that point, I'm really happy. The supply chain is still a problem, but we are getting around it in a way. We might even open a new store in the next year or so. You know, I'm saying that expansion is not out of the question for us.
You're just trying to make the rest of us salivate.
Well, you know, every once in a while, it's good to get a little bit of good news, isn't it? I think it is.
Thanks for sharing, Barry. That's incredible.
Thanks, Mike.
Come east.
Barry,
We need
Barry,
Yes.
Barry, just so I'm clear, if you go back to pre-pandemic sales, where are your sales today relative to, say, you know, fall 20, when COVID started? COVID started early 2020, so 2019, let's say. What are you relative to that?
We kind of have three doors. We've got Lamley's, Boutique Leathers, and Open Road. If you average them all together, it would be between 3 and 5% up.
Okay. So you're back just past par then to what you were doing before.
Lamley's would be up slightly more than 5%. Boutique would be about 3%, and Open Road is almost 3. It's between 1.8 or something like that.
Good on you. Good. Great. Good to hear.
That's from October 1st. That's our year end.
Yeah, that's great. Hope many other retailers have similar stories to tell soon.
Yeah. The other bad note is costs have really gone up, you know. So our first objective was to get the sales rolling again, and now we got to get the bottom line sorted out.
Yeah. So profitability is still not what it was, obviously.
No. Freight is between 4 and 5 times what it was 2 years ago. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. A container that we used to bring in that was about $4,500, say from the Far East, is now over 20.
I heard 2 to 3 a year ago, and I thought that was brutal. I never thought it had gotten to 4 to 5.
What was that?
I'd heard 2 to 3 times back when people were talking about how bad it was a year or so.
People now, they're going to tell you likely 5 if you just pick one number. It's out of control. And the government in the US has now made formed some committees or something to look into the freight gouging, because I think now that some of it's really artificial. They're just charging whatever the traffic will bear.
Yeah. Fortunately, I think that's what it is with a lot of things. Materials, everything, right?
Exactly.
Even lumber. I mean, to us consumers, we go to get some boards for our deck, and it's like I was blown away in the first year of COVID, where the prices of that same wood went from the year before, and it hasn't settled down. Like they've said, okay, well, everyone will pay this, so let's keep it rolling at this price.
Well, they've talked about plywood coming down a little bit. The plywood is, not all lumber, but the plywood, wood shit skyrocketed. But you know, a question that I have for everybody is, it seems, it's my opinion, only opinion, not supported very well, but anytime there's been a price increase on anything, just about, it never really falls back to its original. It might slump a bit, and maybe gas prices and a few things like this are exceptions to this, but it seems once you get the price up so the consumer is prepared to pay $20 for something, it never goes back to its old $14 or whatever it was. And that, I think, applies to groceries and everything. You go in the grocery store, it's $1 an orange now, just about. It's crazy. And I don't see it dropping dramatically, even when things get back more or less to normal. What do you guys think?
Barry, it's Phil Lixtrell here at Richter Montreal again. I happen to have a client who operates in each of the ports of Canada in two ways. Number one, moving containers. Number two, repairing containers. So he's been a pretty good source of information ever since this debacle started and the supply chain gouging. And I just spoke to him yesterday, as a matter of fact. And for example, people have been trying new kinds of strategy and moving goods around to the East Coast and Halifax and Montreal. And guess what? The prices are up to do that. And B, there are capacity issues here. So that now ships are lined up and waiting to unload in Montreal and in Halifax. So a couple of points behind all this. Number one, he tells me he doesn't expect any decrease in any of these container costs. We've been witnessing this, and I've been particularly close to this situation ever since it started about a year and a half ago. And easily, container costs are up 4- and 5-fold. He doesn't think they're going to come down anytime in 2022 or into 2023, for that matter. And he also doesn't see supply chain improving very much, despite intended government intervention, et cetera, et cetera. One of the other issues that he's talked to me about, which I think is very telling, is that, for example, with West Coast, Vancouver, and Prince Rupert, American retailers and American importers are diverting some of their goods up to Canada on the West Coast, paying premiums to have them unloaded there and then trucked back down the West Coast of the United States. And this is taking over a fair bit of the capacity and ability to get product moving. So that's a bit on the supply chain and hearing it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Secondly, as far as prices coming down, couldn't agree with you more, because one of the things, and we're seeing monthly financial statements, first quarter, as I said before, ending this coming weekend for many people because of January year ends, et cetera. So April 30th is the end of Q1. What we're seeing up till now, as I said before, underwhelming sales, margins that are very tight, freight costs that are exorbitant, and then you drop below the gross margin line, and every single line of the income statement has gone up no less than 10%, 20, and 25%. So the arithmetic has become extremely challenging in that way. And yet, on the other hand, ability to raise prices is somewhat limited. Guys in the furniture industry have been doing it quietly or not so quietly for the last year and have been getting away with it, and demand up until recently has not really altered. But people in soft goods and footwear and apparel in general, we find, are very reluctant to put into effect anything more than a nominal 5 or 10% increase. And not much of that has taken place in spring. So more of it will take place in the fall. So all this to say, price increases, yes, and we're seeing it at the gas pump, and we're seeing it at the supermarket checkout counter for sure, and of course on mortgage rates and the like. But this is where I sort of come back and say the next quarter and beyond that are going to be very telling. But it is very challenging out there, and some of these price increases that you've referred to, I agree. They're not about to come down because they can't. And just final point.
This is an interesting little story, but let me tell it to you anyway. In Western Canada, Lamley's Western Wear is a very dominant. We more or less control the market. There's a few others.
Top dollar.
Yeah. So everybody looks to us, our competitors, what's Lamley's pricing it at? And they won't move their price until we do. So we kind of have to be the leader in moving ahead and raising our prices, which is a very, very awkward position to be in. So when we raise our price, then they will. And we've even discussed with our reps and that, gee, why don't people raise their prices a little bit, and they all tell us they're waiting for you to raise your prices. So I know what you mean. It's hard making that decision to be the leader in the market, raising prices, but that's where it's at for us right now. And we are having to raise our prices. We're trying to, get a decent bottom line. And I have to say, from our consumers, I haven't felt any feedback negative about raising some prices. I think the consumer has been educated that if their costs are so high, everybody on the street even talks about supply chain issues and pricing. So they expect to pay a little bit more. And if you listen to the television, they're talking about food prices, everything going up. So the customer's been kind of warned of this, and I think their expectations is, as long as we don't go too hard, they're prepared to accept some price increases without question.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you, Phil, for bringing that up. With that, we will conclude our call to stay within our 45 minutes. Thank you all so much for taking the time out of your busy day to join us and for participating in this amazing discussion. Remember, you can access all of our content, including past Talk Shop episodes and CREC Live call takeaways on our website at www.crec.live. There you will also find links to our social media pages, as well as the GoFundMe. CREC is a not-for-profit industry group and is driven by volunteers, so your contributions, large or small, go a long way to helping us keep the Canadian consumer real estate industry connected and the content created by Canadians for Canadians rolling. This episode of Talk Shop was sponsored by Precision Media and Marketing, servicing the real estate industry, providing complete marketing services, including measurement, floor plans, photography, videography, and graphic design. Visit them at precisionmnm.com. So with that, we look forward to seeing you at an exciting new monthly CREC Zoom event called Retailer Podium. On our first Retailer Podium, we will have a very special guest from Dollarama coming up in May, so please watch for that. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks again for joining us today. All the best.
Thanks, Slava. Bye. Thank you.
And it's nice to see your smiley face.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Good to see everyone.
Everyone, be safe.
Hope you don't have to dig out too much out east.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Slava.